Hi, welcome. Today we're going to discuss the Expert DT Decision Tree application. It's an Excel app which is very handy and very easy to use, but you need some guidance. Make sure you have the actual app loaded on your desktop as well as the DT license file, which is what I call a decision tree license file. So when you double click on the app and launch it, we will start with a sample decision tree. We will use this to give you some guidance into the functionality of the app. The first thing to note is the question mark. When you click on that, you will see some help text here guiding you as to what the various functions are. You can click on any of the spaces area of the text to deactivate this and declutter your screen. Sometimes your screen might have the menus as such. You can use this little V sign to hide that and declutter your screen and make it elegant. Note that you have some options here. Make sure you have set your options to maximum gain. The other two are for advanced users. Likewise, the offset is for advanced users, and so are the scroll tabs here. We will get to those at a later stage. So let us now take a look at the various nodes. Here you have three color nodes: blue, green, and gold or yellow. The blue is a decision node or a D node, such as this here. This happens to be a place where the user has to make a decision of one or two or even more, many parts as to he would take. That's the user control. Whereas a probability node is where there is two or more events that's likely to happen and the user has no control. There's only a probability that it would happen. For example, here we have a 70% probability that node 4 might occur and a 30% probability that node 5 might occur. Here we have a 60-40 and 50-50. Note that they must always add up to 1. This is the important thing. The next thing to recognize is that all nodes must be connected to at least one other node. This one is connected up here. This is connected down here. You cannot have empty nodes hanging in there. And by the way, the yellow node is the terminal node, which is the end of any given activity. So with this, we know now how the system is set up. The next thing is to know how we can work with all this. The secret is actually a nodes menu. To activate the nodes menu, you select a node and simply right mouse click, and here pops up the node menu. And let's look at the various options here. The first one is changing a node from its present type to a different type. So let's take this node that we just looked at, and it's a, no, hold on, let's cancel that. And let's take a node here and change this to a decision node. Now see, it'll change to blue. Here you are. And it also creates two additional nodes because the system knows that if you're going to make a decision, you must at least have two paths to follow. You're the one who has to decide. So we have one of two paths. Now if I convert this to a probability node, on the other hand, it will actually change to green, as you can see, and change also turns out to be the event probabilities. Now it says 50-50, and I can say 0.3, 0.7, always add up to 1. So this is very important to understand. The next thing, of course, is to add a new node, for example. So here I am. I can click on this and say add a branch leading to a new node. So here you are. You will have a third event that might occur. Of course, we must add it up to 1. So here we have to make this point, say 0.55 and 0.15. We can certainly always check to see if we did it right. Let's say I just put 1 here, 0.1 here, and I can go back to my menu, just click on any node, and say redraw tree and check for errors, and it will redraw it and say, hey, at node 11 it doesn't add up to 1, it adds up to 0.95. So I know that I made a mistake, so I'll change this to 0.15. Okay, I can also take a node such as this and assign it to another node. Say I want to move this to a different node, so I can look at this node and watch what I'm going to do. Go here, this time I say reassign to a predecessor node, and I'll say okay. Then it says, hey, where do you want to assign it to? All I have to do is make sure my cursor is active there and just select this node and say okay. And guess what? We now have this attached to this node. Of course, he says you've got a mistake, buddy. You need to make sure they all add up to 1. So we have to now make this 0.55. Let's see, and then redraw to see if there's an error. Select any node and say redraw, and it says oops, you've got an error in 2 places. Guess what? At node 3 you have only 0.95, so I could probably make this a 0.2, and at node 11 I need to add 15 more, the one that I removed. So here we are. I'm going to make this a 0.45, so now I know that adds up to 1, and I'll make this a 0.2, and assuming it's 25, 45, 55, and just click on this node and just double check with the redraw. And we are good. To delete a node, all you have to do is select the node, right click and say delete this node. Click and it's gone. But of course, don't forget, we once again have an error. So I need to make this to, let's say this to 0.75, any number. And we have this. Of course, these numbers have a lot of significance down the road. We'll talk to you about it. The last thing that we want to know is how do we draw a fresh tree? Just select any node and go to your menu and say erase this decision tree and build a new one. I'll say this to be on the safe side. I'll say okay, and it says, well, if you want to start, what type of node will you want to start with? And I'll say I'd like to start with the decision node, and I say okay. And once I say okay, it puts out a decision node with 2 terminal nodes saying, hey, there are 2 events. Well, I can, as before, go in and make this a probability node, and then probably go in and make another decision node. I can even add a node to this one that's an extra path. So here I'll say let me add 1 and make sure there's no hanging nodes, so we don't have any more. I can certainly add a new one here, and you will see it comes way down here as another entire path. I can make that a probability node. It's very easy, just go on and on and on, adding and building your node. So as you can see, this is what you need to know as to how you can navigate through this process, and don't forget to lock the tree once you fix it, right? So this is very important. At this stage we will conclude the functionality part of it. I encourage you to repeat this process 2 or 3 times so that you're familiar with the functionality, and in a later video we will discuss the actual building of the tree.